Thank you so much. We'll get started. And intraocular pressure, often still in most parts of India, glaucoma is defined as any pressure which is above IOP above 21. But let me tell you at the outset, this is not correct definition as of glaucoma today. So let us see how that magic number of 21 came into existence at all. It followed the work of Ledecker in 1958, who did Schiot's tonometry in 20,000 Swiss eyes and found a mean IOP of 15.5 millimeters of mercury. And taking the standard deviation was about 2.5, and taking two standard deviations above this mean value, it gave us that magic number of 21. And at that time, they also thought, 1958, they thought that 3 standard deviations above this, that means 24 millimeters of mercury, must have disease. So with that background, this work was ratified a bit later by the collaborative glaucoma study, which told us that when the pressure is between 20 and 23, the relative risk of developing glaucoma increased to 4 times compared to when the pressure was less than 20. Also, the second thing which I showed you in the previous slide was also ratified, that with the pressure above 24, the relative risk of developing glaucoma increased 11 times. Now that was way back. Now let us understand how to define glaucoma today, and the best way to do it in your exams is, please mention glaucoma as an optic neuropathy where the main risk factor is IOP. So that would be the contemporary definition, and that is the importance of IOP in glaucoma. It is the main and the only risk factor that we have some control on in glaucoma treatment. So if IOP is so important to us in glaucoma, it is only logical that we should know if the IOP you are measuring is actually correct. So this brings us to the discussion of tonometers, and whenever in your exams you are asked to classify tonometers in your theory exams, this is the flow chart to do it along. So you should say it is the indentation where the prototype is Schiot's, and then the applanation category. Applanation further can be contact and non-contact. Contact can be further divided as dynamic and static type, and the dynamic ones are the newer tonometers, especially the ocular response analyzers and the Pascal's dynamic contour tonometry or DCT. And the static ones can be further subclassified as having variable area and the fixed area. And here the name to say in your exams is Maklakoff, but the one to pay attention to, if the ones we use in our clinics, are all fixed area, static, contact, applanation tonometers. And here we have the Goldman, Perkins, and the Tonopen. I must discourage you at your resident or PG level that Schiot's tonometry is to be discouraged, but still, having said this, I know a number of colleagues in India continue to depend only on Schiot's tonometry. Now, which is not correct, but if they continue to depend on that, then let me suggest a good way forward. If you have to use this, then what I suggest is you do the measurement with the 5.5 weight, which is usually available, and then repeat the measurement with the 7.5 weight added, and take the average of the two pressure readings, and that to some extent is going to nullify the effect of ocular rigidity. So if Schiot's is not the good tonometer, then obviously the gold standard is the Goldman applanation, and I'll be using the short form GAT for this in this presentation. And though now we know it is the gold standard, please understand what has happened since 2003 is that we now understand that it was calibrated way back for a corneal thickness of 520 microns. And knowing the importance of corneal thickness and IOP that we know now, we know that it may be fallacious. The GAT reading may be fallacious in other CCT ranges. So keep that in mind, but still it is a gold standard one still. I'm going to give you 2 Viva questions on this that is asked to you in your instrument Vivas. The diameter of the prism is 3.06 and the area of contact or applanation is 7.25. This is the question that used to be asked in your PG entrance exams also. The principle on which applanation works on is shown in the schematic, and it's an Imbert-Fixed law, and simply put, it means pressure is force upon area. Now, there is a long mathematical calculation that goes into arriving at this, but the summary of this is that you can see the large marker, which is equal to 1 gram, and that with the mathematical calculation, 1 gram equals to 10 millimeters of mercury. And the smaller marker that you see on the dial here is 2 millimeters of mercury. The procedure, we should set the measuring drum on 1 gram, which I will remind you was equal to 10 millimeters of mercury. Then you align this white line on the prism holder to the 180 degree marker. The light source should be at 60 degrees temporal. Use the wider and the wider illumination, cobalt blue filter, and a higher zoom where possible, and always do it in a dark room. So when you are setting out to do Goldmann applanation, I don't know why the residents and PGs and practitioners struggle with this, because they don't invest in applanation, though they'll be ready to invest in perimeters and OCTs. So the reason I think they struggle is that if you straight away look through the binocular of the slit lamp, then you will not get these mires very easily. So what I suggest is you start, when you are taking the prism, you take it closer to the cornea as shown here and see from outside. Binocular ke through mat dekho slit lamp ke, see from outside whether you are just touching. And then you will see the limbal glow, the yellow glow that comes around the cornea. Corresponding to that position that you see from outside, then you will see these mires through the binoculars of the slit lamp. So I think that is an easy way forward, which must be learned in practice at beginning level. So these are the correct width of the mires. You can see the superior one, the inferior one, both are in equal proportion to each other, and you join the inner margins of the two half rings here. This one is not correct because the superior mire you can see is smaller. Here the inferior mire is smaller. Perkins is the handheld version of the same, where this forehead rest is being anchored by you can see the thumb of the examiner is anchoring to the forehead, and the instrument is being held up by the other hand. And like you did in Goldmann, I suggest that you first align this prism from outside. बाहर से देखते हुए आप उसको पास में लेके जाओ cornea के, and then once it's touching, then you switch to the cobalt blue filter and you will see the mires. Non-contact tonometer is again to be discouraged, but it's unfortunate that still a number of colleagues in India depend only on this. So why it is to be discouraged? It's a screening tonometer, and the reason for discouraging is because that jet of air that comes from the NCT, it gives some patients give a tight squeeze, and that gives a high pressure which is erroneous. And also there is a larger exposure time, and that may be affected by the ocular pulse. The pressure may be affected. So if still we have to tell you the best way forward with NCT is, you must explain the procedure first, tell the patient that that jet of air that hits the cornea is not going to harm the eye, it is just momentary. Always take 3 pressure readings which are in 1 to 2 millimeters of mercury of each other, and average of the 3 readings will give you the NCT value. Just one slide about tonopen. It belongs to the Mackay-Marg applanation category. This is what it looks like, and the advantages are 2. Because it's portable, you can use it for EUAs and also in your in-ward consults. And also, arguably, it is the best tonometer to use over corneal opacities to record the IOP. So that was about tonometers. Let me give you this one slide about the general principles of tonometry. So first is that, like you do for hypertension, you never start treatment by recording one blood pressure reading alone. You always are taught that take 2-3 BP measurements before starting hypertension treatment. The same principle should apply to glaucoma also. You should take 2 to 3 pressure measurements before starting the treatment if required. Always record the time of the IOP measurement, and the question asked often is it a must to do diurnal variation always in a glaucoma patient? Well, the answer is yes, if possible, yes, but certainly in this situation, when you are suspecting normal tension glaucoma, you should do a diurnal before starting because you may be missing the intermittent spikes. And secondly, if there is unexplained progression, you find pressure आपके patient का 14 और 16 के बीच में चल रहा है, and that you feel is okay for that patient, उसके बावजूद the disc and the fields are progressing. So then you can do a DV to see whether there is a pressure spike anytime that you are missing. It can be done in resident level and institutions. You can admit the patient also and record the nighttime pressure, but that often is not possible always. So what we suggest is to do an office diurnal. It means this only, to take 2 to 4 measurements during morning to evening the same day, or you can call in the patient within the next 7 to 10 days at different times of the day and have some idea of how the pressure is behaving. So that is office diurnal. Best done with the applanation again, sitting pressures, but it's advisable to take 1 or 2 supine pressures also to see if there is a large postural variation in the pressure. And any discrepancy, or when there is greater than 5 to 6 millimeters of discrepancy, that means the patient is more likely to be a suspect for glaucoma. Again, doesn't mean you start treatment, but yes, that is something to be alert about. The last thing about IOP is that you should learn how to set target pressures. Remember in the beginning I said every pressure above 21 need not be glaucoma. So what we need to do when you set out to treat open angle glaucoma is to individualize the pressures of each eye of that patient. Target pressure is the pressure we feel the eye will be safe at. And the factors that help you to determine the target will be the damaging IOP. Higher the pressure at which the nerve has got damaged, higher should be your target pressure. So it's directly proportional. Second is, with a family history positive and a thin cornea, again you lower the target pressure. But the main factor that helps you to determine is the severity of the damage. And this is one situation. When visual field is normal and the neuroretinal rim of the optic nerve is also okay, then for starters, low 20s should be your target pressure. Look at the flip side. When there is visual field loss on both sides of the horizontal meridian of the field, even aim for low 20s as the starting target pressure. Always target pressure is a range, it is not a single number, and it needs to be reviewed and adjusted over the course of the treatment. Now moving on to the second part of this is gonioscopy. Again, I'm not going to give you an exhaustive list of the pictures of gonioscopy, but I'm going to stick myself to the basic things that you must know at PG level. That is something which are asked also commonly, and that is something you will take kind of when you in your future careers, this is what you will see. So direct and indirect gonioscopy. The prototype direct gonioscope is the Kipps lens, like shown here, and for doing direct gonioscopy, the patient is lying supine, that like you can see, and it is filled up by the viscous jelly, and this is the handheld slit lamp in the hand of the examiner, and the examiner actually rotates around the patient. So patient ko examiner ko ghumna hai sab taraf, and that is how its direct gonioscopy is done. The therapeutic direct gonioscope is sometimes the question asked in your viva. This was diagnostic. The therapeutic one is this one. It is the Swan-Jacob lens, which is now increasingly becoming popular with goniosyneculasis for ACG treatment. Indirect gonioscopy can be of 2 types. The Goldman type is shown here, and the next slide will show you the 4-mirror gonioscope. I do believe that this is easy enough. Like I told you for applanation, I don't know why people are scared of applanation. And still, I don't know why people are scared of gonioscopy. So maybe it's the technique which is shown here. Its technique is easy to master, especially with this Goldman type. So the patient is explained the procedure, anesthetized and positioned on the slit lamp. And the patient is asked to look down as he is doing here. And then as the patient is looking down, you gently tilt the gonioscope towards the cornea. Indirect gonioscopy. These are 2 ways. So use 3 fingers like I'm showing you here. And the 3 fingers either can be the back of the fingers are resting on the cheekbone, or you can use the flesh of the 3 fingers which can be resting on the cheekbone. Both techniques are easy and depending on each examiner. The advantage of 4-mirror gonioscopy is, the advantage is that no coupling fluid is required, so it's less messy, nothing dripping down the side. All quadrants can be viewed on one instance, like this picture is showing you. You can see all the 4 mirrors at one go without rotating the lens. And the main advantage is knowing how common ACG is in India. This is the gonioscope that is used for indentation. Usually you cannot indent with the Goldman type. So with this indentation, you can actually see whether the angle is opening up to some extent. I'll give you the names of some gonioscopes which are again asked. These are the 3 types of Goldman. This is a single mirror. This will have the 3 mirrors. And these are the 4-mirror ones. The name of this is the Zeiss type. This is the Postner type. And these 2 are with the handles. The one without the handle, though this is again 4-mirror, is it's the Sussman type. And the name of the handle is? Very good. It's Unger, U-N-G-E-R. That's special for Zeiss. And again, if you're given this as your instrument viva, these could be the questions that could be asked to you. There are so many gradings which are given in textbooks, but there are 2 which are popular in India. One, of course, is Schaffer's grading, which is universal across the world. But the second one is the RPC grading. But today I'm going to focus in the interest of time only on the Schaffer's grading, where you can see that this is the corneal apex. ये 2 जो आपको beam दिख रही है, the apex of the cornea, where it is meeting, like here, is corresponding to the Schwalb's line. So in an open angle like shown here, you can see the apex, but when the angle is closed like here, you cannot see the 2 beams meeting. You cannot see the apex. So this is the foolproof method. Sometimes in a distorted angle, this is the foolproof method to see where the Schwalb's line is. And then you can go down and see the angle structures. So we are interested in grade 2, grade 1 and grade 0. And in degrees, they correspond to 20 degrees or less. So this is the Schaffer's grading. And see the Schaffer's grading now. Can someone help me with this? In this part of the mirror, you can see in the top half, no angle structure is visible. So this must be grade 0 here. In the lower half, some structures are visible. This must be grade 1 to 2. Look at the opposite one, where all the angle structures are possibly visible. This would be grade 3 to 4. Again, the same thing here. This is 1/3 is closed. Here you see 2 to 3. Look at the pigment here, the patchy pigmentation, I'll come to that, is classical for ACG. This is the commonest type of angle closure in India that we sometimes see, is creeping angle closure, where the angle is getting zipped off in sequentially, angle to angle or from one side to the other. I'm a firm believer it is easiest to learn gonioscopy structures from the iris side, because brown iris, Indian eyes have brown iris, this is the consistent landmark. The dark brown or the chocolatey brown color that you will see beyond the iris will be the ciliary body band, like you see here. The first white line that you will see beyond the chocolate color is the scleral spur. Trabecular meshwork you can see is pink or light red usually. This is the TM, both the anterior and posterior parts are shown here. And the first white line that you will see beyond the TM will be the Schwalb's line. So इधर से start करना आसान है, and this is something which I want all of you to do when you reach your medical colleges next week. Try to see 10 open angles like this. Start from the iris, go forward, and then try to see the ACG findings which I'm going to show you next. So this is open angle. Compare these where all the structures are visible with this picture, where you cannot see any of the structures because it's dim light. This is a closed angle. Appreciate also how convex the iris is. But see what happens. यहाँ पर light dim है. अब अगली slide देखना इसी patient में. What we have done here is we have increased the light. Light बढ़ा दी. अब angle जो कुछ भी नहीं दिख रहा था वहाँ पे. Now you can see some angle structures are visible. So probably now a grade 2 angle here. This is known as manipulative gonioscopy, where you are using the light of the slit lamp. This is also known as the on-off effect. See it again. This is with the bright light, grade 2 angle. The same patient, when you dim the light, when you dim the light, going the wrong way, is it? Yes. So when you go the other way, none of the angle structures are visible. This is one way to manipulate your gonioscopy. The second way is shown here. Again, if you look at the center of the mirror here, no angle structure is visible here. But when the patient is asked to look in which side? Towards the mirror. So when you ask the patient to look towards the mirror, you can see now at least the trabecular meshwork is now visible, which was not visible here. This is the second way of doing manipulative gonioscopy, is to ask the patient to look towards the mirror. So I repeat, the two ways are to use the light, and second is the direction of the mirror. This must be done. And the third one is what I told you with the 4-mirror gonioscope. You can indent on the central cornea. The same thing you will see if the angle is open or can be opened. Some gonio findings of ACG. I know all of you know what these are. These are? Yeah, these are possibly goniosynechiae. Now, appreciate what they look like and compare it with the next picture where you can see the same thing here. They start from the iris, usually stop at the trabecular meshwork. But compare this caliber with this one. Ye kya hai? This is a peripheral anterior synechiae. It is much wider. So appreciate this. Goniosynechiae, peripheral anterior synechiae, both representing chronic angle closure, synechial angle closure. Now appreciate the next picture where, pehle ye wala phir se dekh lo, the goniosynechiae, what they look like. Compare it with this one. Much finer, though also arising from the iris. Again going almost to the trabecular meshwork, but they are much finer and finger-like. These are iris processes. And this can be an occasional normal finding also, but if you see many more, especially in this picture with the more anteriorly inserted iris, it could suggest a developmental or a juvenile angle. And this is showing you lots of them, lots of iris processes. तो ये वाला फिर से goniosynechiae, peripheral anterior synechiae, probably representing chronic angle closure. Look at this. ये कहां तक रुक रहे थे? Where were they going to? Trabecular meshwork. Look at this now. Are they going up to the TM or beyond that? Much beyond. In fact, they are going across the angle as a whole. They are crossing the angle and going up to the sclera. So these are known as broad-based synechiae, which are more typical for uveitis. So this is a uveitic glaucoma, a uveitic secondary angle closure. This is the primary chronic ACG. So that is how you can differentiate. Pigmentation. I told you the normal color of the pigment is, in Indian eyes, is pink or light red. This is absolutely a brown pigment. This is heavy pigmentation. And you can appreciate it's like this all across. See, angle mein pura uniform pigmentation hai. This will be pigmentary glaucoma, and I can say that especially if I see the transillumination defects on the iris, the moth-eaten appearance, which is so classical. Now compare this picture with the next one. Again, it is pigmentation. And in this, the pigmentation is it uniform? No, it's a patchy pigmentation. And especially when you see exfoliation flakes here, this would be exfoliation glaucoma. Again, in exfoliation glaucoma, you have pigmentation of the angle of the TM, but it's patchy, it's more spotted. And also you can get not this much, but isolated spots if you see, those can also be for angle closure. So those are the three important causes of primary glaucomas causing pigmentation. Now moving to the last 3 to 4 slides, trauma. Tell me, what was the color of the ciliary body band I showed you? It's chocolate, dark brown. And it's very easy to see in a Caucasian eye because it's a hazel iris in a Caucasian eye. So ये तो iris का color है. तो ये सारा dark chocolate brown जो है, it's a much wider ciliary body band than you see otherwise. So this must be angle recession. Absolutely good. That's correct. Now see the next picture. In this also you see angle recession, all right, but you also see a torn iris. So this is iridodialysis as well as angle recession. And the third traumatic sequelae is blood in the angle from trauma. Neovascular glaucoma. How can I say these are not normal iris blood vessels going to the angle? Absolutely. So they are going again, they are anchoring to the sclera, they are crossing almost the entire angle. Also, they do not follow a pattern. They can be arborescent, they can follow any pattern they want. This is still the angle is open here. These are new vessels in the angle, but the angle is open. So what grade of neovascular glaucoma this is? It's grade 3. Why is it important to see this? क्योंकि हो सकता है अगर इस पेशेंट में आपने रेटिना पूरा ट्रीटमेंट कर दिया, the way it should be done, it is possible the patient can get away without glaucoma surgery. Though not hard and fast, but look at the next picture. In this part, it is new vessels, but none of the angle structures is visible. This is a grade 4 neovascular glaucoma where the angle is now closed. These patients usually would require a glaucoma surgery in addition to the retina treatment. So just to summarize, and this is the last slide that we have, the important points which I have told you about IOP and gonioscopy will be that every pressure above 21 is not glaucoma. Please, in your internship, you learn Schiot's tonometry, that is all right. But in future careers, if you have to invest in 2 glaucoma instruments, ma'am, will I be correct? There should be applanation and gonioscope. They should be done without jumping to even OCT or perimetry. Those are the 2 things you must do along with 90D and 78D lenses. Then applanation, like I said, it must be, you must learn to do this. It's easy. You must learn how to set target pressure, and the way I've taught you here. Gonioscopy is a must. And what I suggest is, again I reiterate, that you must do 10 open angle gonioscopies. Do it next week. See the structures starting from the iris side, and then move on to angle closure. Don't be thinking of seeing ciliary bodies and ciliary body tumors. वो देखो ना देखो, वो हमारे लिए छोड़ दो. Leave it to the glaucoma specialist. But open angle and angle closure, you must learn how to do manipulative gonioscopy. You must learn how to appreciate goniosynic K and peripheral anterior synic K. I must thank all of you for your patient hearing and must tell you all the best for your future careers. Thank you again. If there's anything I've missed, this is my email. I'll be available to you in the next 4 days, but this is the email. Please write a mail. I'll be happy to help. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Dr. Tuli, your lecture was